Hey everyone, I'm John, and I guess you could say I've got quite the story to share. It all started during what I thought would be a perfect holiday with my wife, Jessica. We'd been together for a while and things were good, or so I thought. We decided to take a break from our everyday lives and go on a vacation to try and reconnect, just the two of us. Jessica and I went to this beautiful beach resort. Every day was a mix of lounging by the pool, exploring the local markets, and enjoying the nightlife. It was like a dream. We were having a blast, laughing together and making memories. But then, something changed. Jessica started spending more time on her phone. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone needs a little downtime, right? But then one night, I caught a glimpse of her screen. She was texting someone named Muscle Man. My curiosity got the better of me, and I casually asked, "Who's that?" "Oh, just an old friend," she replied, brushing it off like it was nothing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Jessica had never mentioned this friend before. The next few days she seemed distant, her eyes always drifting back to her phone. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. After all, we were on vacation, and I didn't want to ruin it with baseless suspicions. Then, one afternoon, while I was napping in our hotel room, Jessica slipped out. When I woke up and noticed she was gone, I decided to take a walk around the resort. That's when I saw her, standing next to a shiny black Lamborghini, chatting with a guy who looked like he walked straight out of a fitness magazine. His muscles bulged under his tight shirt, and Jessica was laughing, twirling her hair like a schoolgirl. I felt a pang of jealousy but quickly dismissed it. Maybe he was just another guest she bumped into. I approached her and she quickly introduced him as Tony, a new friend she'd met at the gym. We exchanged polite nods, and I couldn't help but feel inadequate standing next to him. My chubby frame and modest income were no match for his wealth and sculpted body. Little did I know this was just the beginning of my nightmare. The rest of our vacation carried on, but something had definitely shifted between us. Jessica was more secretive, always stepping out to take calls or sending quick, hushed texts when she thought I wasn't looking. I didn't want to come off as insecure or controlling, so I let it slide, hoping it was just a phase. One evening, a few days before our vacation ended, Jessica told me she was going out with a friend she had bumped into. She said it so casually, like it was no big deal. I was a bit surprised, but didn't think too much of it. I had some work to catch up on anyway, so I figured I'd use the time productively. As she left, I noticed she had put in a lot of effort into her appearance, much more than usual. Her dress clung to her body, and she wore makeup that highlighted her stunning features. I couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. "Have fun," I said, trying to sound cheerful. She flashed me a quick smile and was out the door. Later that night, I decided to take a break from work and go for a walk. The resort was quiet, the kind of peaceful that lets you hear your own thoughts a bit too loudly. I wandered aimlessly until I found myself near a dimly lit path leading to a secluded beach area. That's when I saw them. Jessica and Tony, the muscle-bound guy from the other day, walking side by side, laughing and talking. My heart sank. I tried to convince myself that it was just a coincidence, but deep down, I knew better. Jessica spotted me first. Her eyes widened in shock, but then she quickly composed herself. "John, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice a bit too calm. "I was just taking a walk," I replied, my eyes darting between her and Tony. "What's going on?" Before she could answer, Tony stepped forward, placing a possessive arm around her waist. "Relax, man," he said with a smirk. "We're just hanging out." "Hanging out?" I echoed, disbelief lacing my voice. Jessica looked at me, a mix of guilt and defiance in her eyes. "John, it's not what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. I could feel my world crumbling around me. Tony, sensing my distress, pushed me away and pulled Jessica closer, planting a kiss on her lips right in front of me. I stood there, stunned and heartbroken. "Jessica, what are you doing?" I demanded, my voice breaking. She didn't answer, and before I could process what was happening, they got into Tony's Lamborghini and sped off, leaving me standing there, shattered and alone. That night, they slept together in a hotel while I spent hours looking for them, my mind racing with anger and confusion. The next morning, I saw them at a coffee shop, openly flaunting their affair. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. I pulled out my phone and recorded them, hoping to gather evidence of her betrayal. My life had taken a dark turn, and I knew there was no going back. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with pain and betrayal, but I had to face it head on. The day after I saw Jessica and Tony at the coffee shop, my mind was still reeling from the betrayal. I spent most of the day in a daze, trying to figure out what to do next. I couldn't let Jessica continue deceiving me, but I also couldn't bear the thought of confronting her again. In the evening, Jessica came back to our hotel room, acting like everything was normal. She had a smile plastered on her face, but I could see the guilt lurking in her eyes. I decided to play along for now, keeping my anger and hurt bottled up inside. "How was your day?" she asked casually, as if she hadn't just shattered my heart the night before. "It was fine," I replied, forcing a smile. "Did you have fun with your friend?" She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, it was nice catching up." I wanted to scream, to tell her I knew everything, but I held back. Instead, I quietly planned my next move. A few days later, back at home, Jessica told me she was going out with the same friend again. This time, I didn't bother asking any questions. I knew exactly who she was meeting. As she left, I quickly gathered my things and followed her, making sure to keep a safe distance. I watched as she met up with Tony, her face lighting up as soon as she saw him. They got into his Lamborghini and drove off. I tailed them to a fancy hotel in the city. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched them check in together, their behavior blatantly intimate. I parked my car a few blocks away and waited, my mind racing with anger and hurt. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged from the hotel, holding hands and laughing. I followed them again, this time to a swanky apartment complex. I knew I had to confront her, but I needed more proof. The next morning, I saw them at a cafe near the apartment. They were sitting close together, Tony's hand resting possessively on her thigh. I took out my phone and started recording. They didn't notice me, too wrapped up in each other. I captured every moment, every touch, every kiss. Later, I posted the video online, sharing my story anonymously. I felt a mixture of vindication and sorrow as the comments poured in, strangers offering their support and advice. It was both comforting and heartbreaking to know I wasn't alone in my pain. But the story didn't end there. Tony's charmed life began to unravel. He was caught cheating on Jessica with another woman, his infidelity exposed to everyone he knew. His reputation took a massive hit, and he was eventually fired from his job. The man who had once seemed so untouchable was now facing the consequences of his actions. As for Jessica, her lies and deceit became too much to bear. I confronted her with the evidence I had gathered, showing her the video and the countless messages she had exchanged with Tony. She tried to deny it at first, but the truth was undeniable. "John, I'm so sorry," she sobbed, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant to hurt you." "Sorry doesn't cut it, Jessica," I replied, my voice cold and detached. "You betrayed me, and there's no coming back from that." I filed for divorce shortly after, determined to rebuild my life without her. The road ahead was tough, but I knew I deserved better. Jessica and Tony's actions had torn my world apart, but they also gave me the strength to move on and find happiness on my own terms. In the end, the rich, muscular man who had seemed so perfect was just as flawed and human as anyone else, and Jessica, who had fallen for his superficial charm, was left to face the consequences of her choices. As for me, I was finally free from the web of lies and betrayal, ready to start a new chapter in my life. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. The shock of Jessica's betrayal gradually morphed into a dull, throbbing pain that seemed to follow me everywhere. Despite everything, part of me still couldn't believe that the woman I had loved and trusted could do something so hurtful. Jessica, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of emotions. One moment she was apologetic and full of remorse. The next she was defensive, trying to justify her actions. But I had no time for her excuses. I had to focus on moving forward. One evening, after she had spent yet another day with Tony, I decided it was time to confront her directly. When she walked through the door, I was ready. "Jessica, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but filled with the weight of my hurt. She looked at me, her face a mixture of guilt and defiance. "John, I know what you're going to say." "No, you don't," I interrupted. "You've been lying to me, cheating on me, and I have the proof. I saw you with Tony. I recorded everything." Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. "You what?" I took out my phone and played the video. The look on her face as she watched herself with Tony was almost enough to make me feel sorry for her. Almost. "John, I don't know what to say," she stammered. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't change what you did," I replied coldly. "You made a choice, Jessica. You chose him over me, over us." Tears streamed down her face, but I remained unmoved. "I'm filing for divorce," I continued. "There's no way we can come back from this." She nodded, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "I understand. I deserve this." That night she packed a bag and left. It was surreal, watching her walk out of our home, the place where we had shared so many memories. But it was also a relief. The person she had become was a stranger to me, and I needed to reclaim my life. In the days that followed, I focused on getting my affairs in order. I contacted a lawyer, began the paperwork for the divorce, and started the painful process of untangling our lives. Jessica tried to reach out a few times, but I ignored her calls and messages. There was nothing left to say. As for Tony, his downfall was swift and brutal. The video I had posted went viral, and soon enough everyone knew about his affair with Jessica. His other girlfriend found out and dumped him, and his employers were less than thrilled about the scandal. He lost his job, his social standing, and ultimately, his lavish lifestyle. One afternoon I was sitting at a cafe trying to enjoy a cup of coffee when I saw him. Tony, the once confident, muscle-bound charmer, looked defeated. He walked in, ordered a drink, and sat down a few tables away from me. He hadn't noticed me yet, so I watched as he sat there, staring into his cup. It was then that I saw Jessica walk in. She spotted him immediately and rushed over. They exchanged a few words, and it was clear from their body language that things were not going well. She was pleading, her eyes filled with desperation, while he looked away, uninterested. Suddenly, they both noticed me. Jessica's face turned pale, and Tony's expression hardened. They knew I had seen everything. Jessica tried to come over and talk to me, but I shook my head and walked out, leaving them to deal with the mess they had created. That night, I reflected on everything that had happened. I realized that despite the pain and betrayal, I was starting to feel a sense of freedom. I was no longer tied down by Jessica's lies or Tony's arrogance. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. Moving forward wasn't going to be easy, but I knew I had the strength to do it. Jessica and Tony's actions had torn my life apart, but they had also given me the opportunity to rebuild it, stronger and better than before. And that was exactly what I intended to do. As the days turned into weeks, I started to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. The divorce proceedings were in full swing, and though it was painful, it was also a necessary step towards my healing. I moved into a small apartment closer to my office, leaving behind the house that was filled with memories of a life that no longer existed. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into my job, staying late and taking on extra projects to keep my mind occupied. My colleagues noticed the change, but they didn't ask questions. They just offered their quiet support, which I appreciated more than they knew. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I decided to stop by the gym. I had been neglecting my fitness for years, and it was time to take better care of myself. As I walked through the doors, I felt a mix of apprehension and determination. This was the first step towards reclaiming my life. The gym was a different world, filled with people focused on their own goals. I felt a pang of jealousy watching the fit and confident bodies around me, but I pushed it aside and got to work. The first few sessions were tough, but with each visit, I felt myself getting stronger, not just physically but mentally as well. One day while I was at the gym, I bumped into an old friend, Mark. We hadn't seen each other in years, but it felt like no time had passed. We caught up, and I shared the basics of what had happened with Jessica. He listened without judgment and offered his support. "Why don't you come out with us tonight?" Mark suggested. "A few of us are going to grab some drinks. It'll be good for you to get out and have some fun." I hesitated for a moment, but then I realized he was right. I needed to start living my life again. "Sure, why not?" I replied with a smile. That evening we met at a local bar. It was crowded and noisy, but it felt good to be out. I was surrounded by laughter and chatter, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of happiness. Mark introduced me to his friends, and we spent the night talking and joking. The weight of my past momentarily lifted. As the night wore on, I found myself chatting with a woman named Emily. She was smart, funny, and had a warmth about her that was immediately comforting. We talked about everything from work to travel to our favorite movies. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people enjoying each other's company. At the end of the night, Emily and I exchanged numbers. I wasn't sure where things would go, but it felt good to make a new connection. As I walked back to my apartment, I realized that for the first time since the divorce, I felt a sense of hope. Over the next few weeks, I continued to focus on myself. I went to the gym regularly, spent time with friends, and even started exploring new hobbies. Emily and I went on a few dates, and though I was cautious, I found myself enjoying her company more and more. Meanwhile, Jessica's life was falling apart. She reached out a few times, begging for another chance, but I was firm in my decision. There was no going back. I had seen the true colors of the woman I once loved, and there was no place for her in my future. Tony's downfall was even more satisfying. He lost his job, his reputation, and the lavish lifestyle he had flaunted so arrogantly. He tried to contact Jessica, but she wanted nothing to do with him once his wealth and status were gone. Karma, it seemed, had a way of catching up with everyone. One day, as I was sitting in my apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The pain and betrayal were still there, but they no longer defined me. I had survived, and I was stronger for it. Life was starting to look up. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it head on. I was rebuilding my life, piece by piece, and though the road ahead was long, I knew I was on the right path. Life settled into a new normal over the next few months. The divorce was finalized, and though it was bittersweet, it also brought a sense of closure. I had officially moved on from the life I once knew, and it was time to fully embrace the future. My routine became a mix of work, gym sessions, and spending time with new and old friends. Emily and I continued to see each other, and our relationship began to deepen. She was patient and understanding, never pushing me too hard, and for that, I was grateful. It felt good to be with someone who respected my healing process. One Saturday, as we were having brunch at a cozy cafe, Emily looked at me with a curious expression. "John, have you ever thought about getting back into your old hobbies? You mentioned you used to love painting." I smiled, remembering how much joy painting used to bring me. "Yeah, I have. I guess I just got so caught up in everything that I forgot about it." "Well, maybe it's time to pick it up again," she suggested. "It might be good for you." She was right. That afternoon, I went out and bought some art supplies. Setting up a small studio in my apartment, I began to paint again. The first few strokes felt awkward, but soon enough I found my rhythm. It was therapeutic, a way to express everything I had been holding inside. As the weeks went by, I found myself painting more and more. It became a form of meditation, helping me process my emotions and regain my sense of self. Emily was incredibly supportive, often sitting with me while I worked, her presence a comforting reminder of the new life I was building. One evening, as I was putting the finishing touches on a landscape piece, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before opening it. "John, it's Jessica. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to talk to you. Please, it's important." My heart sank. I hadn't heard from Jessica since the divorce was finalized, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to open that door again. But something in her message sounded urgent. I decided to meet her, hoping it would bring some final closure. We agreed to meet at a park near my apartment. As I approached, I saw her sitting on a bench, looking tired and worn out. She stood up as I got closer, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and desperation. "John, thank you for meeting me," she said softly. "What's going on, Jessica?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She took a deep breath, her eyes welling up with tears. "I messed up, John. I lost everything. Tony, he left me for someone else. I have nothing now. I'm so sorry for everything I did to you." I sighed, feeling a mix of pity and frustration. "Jessica, I'm sorry for what you're going through, but I can't help you. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know. I just needed to tell you that I'm truly sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I had to say it." "Thank you for apologizing," I said, my voice firm. "But it's time for both of us to move on." With that, I walked away, leaving Jessica to deal with the aftermath of her actions. It was a difficult moment, but it also felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had finally closed that chapter of my life for good. Back at my apartment, I found Emily waiting for me. She could see the turmoil in my eyes and pulled me into a comforting embrace. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "Yeah, I am," I replied, feeling a sense of relief. I think I finally put the past behind me. Life continued to improve from there. Emily and I grew closer, and I found joy in my painting and the new friendships I had formed. The scars from my past were still there, but they were no longer a source of pain. They were a reminder of how far I had come and the strength I had found within myself. One evening, as Emily and I were watching the sunset from my balcony, she turned to me with a smile. "John, I'm proud of you. You've come so far." "Thank you," I said, squeezing her hand. "I couldn't have done it without you." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a deep sense of peace. The future was bright, and for the first time in a long time, I was truly excited to see what it held. Just when I thought life was finally on an upward trajectory, the unexpected hit me once more. One morning, as I was preparing to head to work, I received a call from my boss. Our company had been facing financial difficulties for a while, and I had been hoping things would improve. Instead, I was told that they were downsizing and my position was being eliminated. Just like that, I was out of a job. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been relying on my work as a cornerstone for my new routine, a way to distract myself from the emotional chaos of the past year. Without it, I felt lost and unsure of what to do next. Emily was incredibly supportive. She listened to me vent, offered practical advice, and even helped me update my resume. But the stress of job hunting weighed heavily on me. Days turned into weeks, and despite numerous applications and a few interviews, nothing seemed to pan out. One evening, as Emily and I were having dinner, she suggested something that caught me off guard. "John, why don't you try turning your passion for painting into something more? You've been creating some amazing pieces. Have you thought about selling your work?" I laughed, a bit nervously. "Selling my paintings? I don't know, Emily. I paint for myself. I'm not sure if they're good enough to sell." "Are you kidding?" she said, her eyes lighting up. "Your work is incredible. You just need to believe in yourself. There are so many platforms online where you can showcase and sell your art. It's worth a shot." Her enthusiasm was infectious, and after some consideration, I decided to give it a try. I created an online portfolio and started sharing my work on social media. At first, it was slow going, but gradually, I began to receive positive feedback and inquiries about purchasing my paintings. One day, I received an email from a local art gallery. They had seen my work online and were interested in featuring some of my pieces in an upcoming exhibition. I could hardly believe it. This was a huge opportunity, and it felt like a validation of all the hard work I had put into my art. Emily was over the moon with excitement. "I told you, John, this is amazing. You're going to do great." The exhibition was a success. Several of my paintings sold, and I even received a few commissions. For the first time since losing my job, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and direction. However, life had one more curveball in store. Just as things were starting to look up with my art career, I received a call from my mother. My father had been diagnosed with a serious illness, and they needed my help. Without hesitation, I packed a bag and drove to my parents' home. Emily understood and supported my decision, promising to visit as often as she could. Being back in my childhood home was both comforting and disconcerting. The memories of a simpler time clashed with the harsh reality of my father's condition. Caring for my father was challenging, but it also brought us closer together. We had long conversations about life, love, and regrets. One evening, as we sat on the porch, he looked at me with a mixture of sadness and pride. "John, I know you've been through a lot this past year," he said, "but I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've faced so many challenges, and you've come out stronger." His words meant the world to me. They gave me the strength to continue pushing forward even when things seemed bleak. Balancing my new art career, caring for my father, and maintaining my relationship with Emily was tough, but it also made me realize just how resilient I had become. Each challenge I faced, each hurdle I overcame, was a testament to my ability to adapt and grow. Emily's unwavering support was a constant source of strength. She visited often, bringing warmth and light into the darkest days. Together, we navigated the ups and downs, finding joy in the little moments and leaning on each other when things got tough. Through it all, I learned that life is unpredictable and filled with unexpected challenges. But it's also filled with opportunities for growth and transformation. I was no longer the man who had been broken by betrayal. I was someone who had rebuilt his life from the ground up, stronger and more determined than ever. As my father's health stabilized and my art career continued to flourish, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The future was still uncertain, but I knew that with Emily by my side and the strength I had found within myself, I could face whatever came next. The following months were a whirlwind of activity and emotions. Balancing my art career with caring for my father was challenging, but it also gave me a renewed sense of purpose. Emily continued to be my rock, supporting me in every way possible. Her love and encouragement were constant reminders that I was not alone in this journey. One Saturday morning, while I was preparing breakfast for my parents, my father called me into the living room. His voice was weaker than usual, and I could see the toll his illness had taken on him. He patted the seat next to him, and I sat down, bracing myself for whatever he had to say. "John, I've been thinking a lot about the past," he began, his eyes reflecting a mix of nostalgia and regret. "I know I wasn't always there for you the way I should have been, but seeing how you've handled everything, how you've grown, I want you to know how proud I am of you." His words brought tears to my eyes. Despite the struggles and the pain, hearing his approval meant the world to me. We talked for hours that day, reminiscing about old times and sharing stories. It felt like a healing process for both of us, bridging the gap that had formed over the years. As my father's condition stabilized, I found myself with a bit more free time. Emily and I decided to take a short trip to the coast, a much-needed break from the daily grind. The fresh sea breeze and the sound of the waves were incredibly rejuvenating. We spent our days exploring the quaint little towns along the coast and our evenings talking about everything and nothing. One evening, as we watched the sunset from the beach, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "John, have you ever thought about hosting your own art show? You've got so many incredible pieces now. It could be a great way to really establish yourself in the art community." The idea had crossed my mind, but I hadn't seriously considered it. "I don't know, Emily. Do you really think I'm ready for something like that?" "I do," she replied without hesitation. "You've come so far, and your work deserves to be seen. Let's do it." Her confidence in me was contagious. Over the next few weeks, we worked tirelessly to organize the show. Emily handled most of the logistics, allowing me to focus on creating and refining my pieces. It was a hectic time, but also incredibly rewarding. The show was scheduled for early spring, and as the date approached, excitement and nervousness mingled in equal measure. The night of the show was a blur of activity. Friends, family, and art enthusiasts filled the gallery, their admiration for my work evident in their expressions and comments. Emily was by my side, introducing me to potential buyers and fellow artists. Seeing my paintings displayed so prominently, receiving praise and validation, was a surreal experience. One particular painting, a landscape of the beach where Emily and I had watched the sunset, garnered a lot of attention. A well-known art critic approached me. His interest piqued. "This piece is extraordinary," he said. "It captures a sense of peace and introspection that's rare to find. You have a real gift, John." His words filled me with a sense of pride and accomplishment. The night was a resounding success, with several pieces sold and a few commissions lined up. As the last guests left and the gallery quieted down, Emily and I stood amidst the paintings, taking it all in. "You did it," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "We did it," I corrected, pulling her into a tight embrace. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." Life continued to move forward in a positive direction. My art career flourished, and I found myself more content than I had been in years. Emily and I grew even closer, our bond strengthened by the trials we had faced together. One day, as we were walking through a local park, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. "John, I've been thinking a lot about our future. I love you, and I want to build a life with you. What do you think about moving in together?" Her question caught me off guard, but in the best possible way. "I'd love that," I replied, my heart swelling with happiness. "I've been thinking the same thing." Moving in together was a big step, but it felt right. We found a cozy apartment that had plenty of space for both of us, including a small studio where I could continue to paint. The transition was smooth, and living together brought us even closer. As we settled into our new life, we continued to support each other's dreams and aspirations. Emily was working on her own career goals, and I was there every step of the way, just as she had been for me. Our relationship was built on mutual respect, trust, and an unwavering belief in each other. The future was bright, filled with endless possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had also made me stronger, more resilient, and more appreciative of the simple joys in life. With Emily by my side, I was ready to face whatever challenges came our way, knowing that together we could overcome anything. As Emily and I settled into our new apartment, our lives seemed to blossom in ways I hadn't imagined. Living together brought a new level of intimacy and understanding, and we quickly fell into a comfortable rhythm. Every morning we shared breakfast and discussed our plans for the day, and every evening we unwound together, sharing our successes and challenges. Emily continued to be a constant source of support and inspiration. Her career was taking off as well, and I was proud to be by her side as she navigated new opportunities. We made it a point to celebrate each other's achievements, big and small, knowing how important it was to acknowledge our growth and hard work. One day, as I was working on a new painting in my studio, Emily walked in with a wide grin on her face. "John, guess what?" she said, barely able to contain her excitement. "What is it?" I asked, putting down my brush and turning to face her. "I got the promotion!" she exclaimed, throwing her arms around me. "That's amazing!" I hugged her tightly, feeling her joy radiate through me. "You deserve it, Emily. I'm so proud of you." Her promotion meant more responsibilities, but it also came with new challenges and opportunities for growth. We celebrated with a dinner at our favorite restaurant, toasting to her success and the exciting journey ahead. Meanwhile, my art career continued to thrive. The positive reception from my first solo exhibition led to more opportunities, and I found myself busier than ever. One day I received an email from a prestigious gallery in New York. They had seen my work and were interested in hosting an exhibition. It was a dream come true. "Emily, you won't believe this," I said, showing her the email. "The New York Gallery wants to feature my work." Her eyes lit up with excitement. "John, that's incredible! You have to do it!" The next few months were a whirlwind of preparation. I poured my heart and soul into creating new pieces for the exhibition, determined to make it a success. Emily was by my side every step of the way, offering her encouragement and support. The day of the exhibition arrived, and we flew to New York together. The city was vibrant and alive, and I felt a mix of nerves and excitement as we arrived at the gallery. The space was stunning, and seeing my paintings displayed so prominently was surreal. As the evening progressed, the gallery filled with art enthusiasts, critics, and potential buyers. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and several pieces sold before the night was over. One particular piece, a portrait of Emily, garnered a lot of attention. People were captivated by the emotion and depth it conveyed. "John, this is incredible," Emily whispered, squeezing my hand. "I'm so proud of you." Her words meant the world to me. The exhibition was a resounding success, and it marked a significant milestone in my career. As we celebrated that night, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. Returning home, life felt more vibrant and full of possibilities. Emily and I continued to support each other's dreams, knowing that our partnership was a cornerstone of our success. We made time for each other, enjoying quiet evenings at home and adventurous weekends exploring new places. One afternoon, as we were lounging on the couch, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "John, have you ever thought about starting a family?" Her question took me by surprise, but I realized it was something I had been thinking about as well. "I have," I admitted. "I think we'd make great parents." A smile spread across her face. "I think so too. Maybe it's something we should start planning for." The idea of starting a family filled me with a sense of excitement and anticipation. It was another new beginning, a chance to create something beautiful together. We talked about our hopes and dreams for the future, imagining what it would be like to have children and raise them in a home filled with love and creativity. The months that followed were filled with joy and preparation. Emily and I took parenting classes, read books, and talked to friends who had kids, gathering as much knowledge as we could. We converted the spare room into a nursery, painting the walls a soothing shade of blue and filling it with soft toys and books. As Emily's belly grew, so did our excitement. We found out we were having a boy and decided to name him Ethan. The anticipation of his arrival brought us even closer, and we spent countless hours talking about the kind of parents we wanted to be. Finally, the day came. Emily went into labor, and after hours of intense emotions and anticipation, Ethan was born. Holding him in my arms for the first time was the most profound experience of my life. He was perfect, and I knew that our lives had changed forever. Bringing Ethan home was both exhilarating and challenging. The sleepless nights and constant feedings were tough, but every moment with him was a treasure. Emily and I navigated the ups and downs of parenthood together, leaning on each other for support and encouragement. One evening, as I was rocking Ethan to sleep, I looked around our cozy apartment and felt an overwhelming sense of contentment. The journey had been long and filled with unexpected twists and turns, but it had led me to this beautiful moment. Life was far from perfect, but it was ours, and it was filled with love and promise. Emily and I had built a strong foundation, one that could weather any storm. Together, we faced the future with hope and determination, ready to embrace whatever came our way. And as I looked down at Ethan's peaceful face, I knew that we were exactly where we were meant to be, surrounded by love and ready for the next chapter of our incredible journey. The years that followed were a whirlwind of joy, challenges, and growth. Emily and I embraced our roles as parents, finding a new rhythm in our lives with Ethan at the center. Our days were filled with laughter, sleepless nights, and the everyday chaos of raising a child. Through it all, our bond grew stronger, fortified by the love we had for each other and our son. Ethan grew quickly, transitioning from a curious toddler to an energetic young boy. He had Emily's bright eyes and my love for painting. We spent countless afternoons in my studio, where he would create his own little masterpieces alongside me. Watching him explore his creativity reminded me of why I had fallen in love with art in the first place. As Ethan started school, Emily and I found more time to focus on our careers again. Emily's promotion had propelled her into a leadership role, and she thrived in it, balancing her work and home life with a grace that amazed me. My art career continued to flourish, with exhibitions across the country and even a few international shows. One summer, Emily suggested we take a family trip to the beach, the same one where we had shared that pivotal sunset years ago. It seemed like the perfect way to celebrate how far we had come. We rented a cozy beach house and spent our days building sand castles, swimming in the ocean, and simply enjoying each other's company. One evening, as the sun began to set, we walked down to the beach. Emily held Ethan's hand, and I carried a blanket and our old sketch pads. We found a quiet spot and sat down, watching the sky transform into a canvas of brilliant colors. It felt like a full circle moment, a beautiful reminder of our journey together. "Daddy, can we draw the sunset?" Ethan asked, his eyes wide with excitement. "Of course, buddy," I said, handing him his sketchpad and pencils. Emily and I exchanged a smile, and we all started to draw. As we sketched, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had brought us here. The pain and betrayal of the past seemed like a distant memory, replaced by the love and joy of our present. I glanced at Emily, who was concentrating on her drawing, and felt a surge of gratitude for the life we had built together. "Remember the first time we watched the sunset here?" Emily asked, her voice soft. "I do," I replied. "It was a turning point for us, wasn't it?" She nodded. "It was. And look at us now, John. We've come so far." "We have," I agreed, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "I couldn't have done it without you." Later that night, after Ethan had fallen asleep, Emily and I sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket and sipping wine. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was soothing, and the stars above twinkled brightly. "John, there's something I've been wanting to ask you," Emily said, turning to face me. "Would you consider marrying me?" Her question took me by surprise, but in the best possible way. I felt a rush of emotions, joy, love, and a deep sense of contentment. "Yes, Emily, I'd love to marry you." We decided to keep it simple, a small ceremony on the beach with just our closest family and friends. On a warm, sunny day with the ocean as our backdrop, we exchanged vows. Ethan was our ring bearer, proudly carrying the rings down the aisle. As we said our "I do's," I felt an overwhelming sense of happiness. This was the culmination of everything we had been through, the ultimate affirmation of our love and commitment. Emily and I had found each other in the midst of chaos and pain, and together we had built a life filled with love, creativity, and joy. Our wedding day was perfect, a celebration of our journey and the beautiful future that lay ahead. As we danced under the stars, surrounded by the people we loved most, I couldn't imagine being happier. In the years that followed, our family continued to grow and thrive. Emily and I welcomed a daughter, Lily, into our lives, and Ethan embraced his role as a big brother with enthusiasm. Our home was filled with laughter, art, and endless love. Looking back on everything, I realized that the challenges and heartbreaks we had faced had only made us stronger. They had taught us the value of resilience, the importance of trust, and the power of love. Together, we had overcome the odds and created a life that was truly beautiful. As I watched Ethan and Lily play in the yard, their laughter echoing through the house, I felt a deep sense of peace. Emily walked over and slipped her hand into mine, and we stood there, watching our children and marveling at the life we had built. Life was unpredictable and full of twists and turns, but it was also filled with endless possibilities. With Emily by my side and our children filling our home with joy, I knew that we could face anything that came our way. Our journey was far from over, but I was excited to see where it would lead us next. And no matter what, I knew we would face it together, as a family, with love as our guiding light.